And welcome back, guys, to an episode of the Geek Centurions. It's me, boy Eli,
It's me, Joe.
and we're here to talk about some fighting games. Usually, I have Daniel on here, but scheduling is often a bitch. So we're gonna be talking about fighting games, not uh, just how cool they are, but also an aspect that a lot of people tend to have complaints about that I feel are not just warranted, but also kind of need to be addressed, and that is it's nothing negative, nothing not too negative. It's more of like, hey, fighting games don't have stories. They don't have any like good, well, essentially good single player stuff, which is going to be like a story mode. But oftentimes for games like for people who don't know how to play, they always go for story, want a story mode so they can learn and stuff like that. We might go into that discussion, but also might go into talk about how that's kind of a misconception about fighting games having not really a story mode, and why maybe there's a reason as to why it's not as good, or it's just really a different kind of a thing. So I think we should start off with obviously the whole idea of fighting games having a story mode. I don't know. I'll give that to you, Joey. What do you think in that aspect?
I mean, I guess in terms of how fighting games started, like because they started in arcades,
Mm-hmm.
and the arcade mode in a fighting game, which is you just pick a character, you go through various
A gauntlet.
a gauntlet of fighting the other characters, and then you get like a bit of story bit at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Has been sort of what the story mode for fighting games were back in the day. Which I mean, it worked for what it was at the time because obviously, like there are arcade machines. You wanted people to get money, and that was probably an easy way of like getting more quarters out of people. Is like because the characters you fought would get increasingly harder and harder, and hey, if you wanted to beat the game, you need to put some more quarters in and stuff. So I mean, yeah, and I'm guessing because they had just a sizable roster at least of like maybe 8, 10 characters. They had to be like, okay, we can't just like devote like huge amounts of time to
Right.
like explaining a lot of stuff, or we just need to like get sort of a cliff notes version of these characters, their motivations, their backstories, and try to put that in a couple of lines and try to be like, hey, so why are they, what are they doing here? What's this about? And then just like have a quick still image for their ending shot or whatever
Mm-hmm.
of like, and that's how their story ends or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah, it's sort of a byproduct of just being part of the arcade scene back in the day. So I mean, that's sort of just how fighting games stories uh, were. Uh, in the early days.
Yeah. Now, yeah, and I think the thing about it is that once that games started becoming more console, home release kind of stuff, they kind of wanted more aside from like the usual arcade route that a lot of people were kind of used to, and essentially that made it so like, hey, we kind of want a good single player content because there's a lot of people who don't really want to go into multiplayer or stuff like that unless you're in some cases a competitive guy who was like, listen, I don't mind the story mode, but chances are I'm gonna be hitting the matchups, trying to get to learn these characters, how and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously that's not everyone, and of course you need to accommodate for everyone. So that's why story modes were implemented, and I think at some point people started realizing that story modes aren't that good, and I think there's a reason to it why, and it's probably because like you said, each character has their own little motivation for stuff, right? And oftentimes you can curate a very successful storyline in a very like satisfying way. Sort of kind of like what NetherRealm, so the guys who make Mortal Kombat and the Injustice games have been doing, because they're kind of like at the peak of good storytelling in fighting games, or just basically storytelling in fighting games in general. Because you have other stuff that's just like it's there, but it's not as engaging or very confusing or just why are we wasting our time here?
Hmm.
Like, do you have any examples for that,
In terms of just bad fighting game stories,
or
or
just like ones that kind of turn people away? Like they're not terrible, but they'll turn people away.
um, I guess for me, probably I guess a recent example off the top of my head would probably be Guilty Gear's story mode.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. And you love Guilty Gear.
I mean, I like Guilty Gear. I like it quite a bit. I like the characters and stuff. But this is, I think, a thing that's always been a thing. I think since at least Exerd, is that their story modes are more or less just,
Entirely cinematic.
yeah, they're entirely cinematic cutscenes. There's no gameplay whatsoever. I mean, they have arcade routes and stuff, so like you can get like bits of the story from that. But if you wanted sort of like the main story of the game, you would pretty much have to sit down and watch it. What is essentially a 4 hour compilation of cutscenes of stuff happening, and I honestly find that very annoying, because hey, I want to play a video game. This is a video game. I want to play a game. I'm not gonna want to waste 4 hours of just having my PlayStation on and just watching this stuff. You know?
No, I get you. I get you. I mean, I just looked it up online.
I mean, if that's the case, like, then why even bother putting it in there?
Yeah.
Like, I know that, like, for the build up to, or for the release towards the release of Strive, they posted a bunch of the cutscenes from the Exerd games onto their YouTube channel for people to catch up with the story. But I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't understand the reason why you even go that route. Like, because when I think about it, I'm pretty sure friggin' BlazBlue, which is also made by Arc System Works, their story mode, it's a bit visual novel esque with a lot of reading and stuff. Similarly, but at least I'm pretty sure there's at least some gameplay elements in there.
Yeah, I've played through it. There is some gameplay elements, but it's also just a lot of like reading and looking at stills.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I just find that very annoying, especially because if looking at say Mortal Kombat 11, which also goes with a lot of cinematic cutscenes and stuff with their story mode, at least is able to put in like bits of gameplay, you know,
Mm-hmm.
of you fighting characters and stuff.
Yeah, because I remember when MK11 came out, they already just put the whole cutscenes out online, especially like IGN, and I was like, "What is IGN doing? What's going on?" And I didn't miss a beat at all, and it was a fun game. Yeah, sure. Challenging, it's okay. It's okay, but you clearly can tell this was made to cater to those guys who just want a story mode, and it's very indicative of that. It's not really challenging until like the last boss. Granted, you can just adjust the difficulty, but then you can, and if you're not good at the game, you just put it on easy mode and just go through it. And that's not to like talk shit or anything like that. I'm not talking bad about people who can't play a fighting game. I get why, but like I'll tell you this right now, you're not gonna get better from playing the story mode, especially that story mode.
Uh-huh.
And but aside from that, you will enjoy the story. It's a very good story. But oftentimes, a lot of people tend to say like, well, why can't most of these games have it like NRS, Mortal Kombat? They do the whole package, and obviously that's not the case for some games because they, again, like you said, they have such a huge arcade roots, right? But that being said, I don't think a lot of fighting games have a terrible story. I think it's more of it's kind of hard for, I would say this, for established series to have storylines, if you know what I mean.
I think it's it's a bit. I think what I think what you're trying to say is that it's hard uh, for these established for sort of the long lasting fighting games to have like storylines that like um not matters not the word, but it's hard for them to like
A coherent one.
yeah like have a coherent one.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I'm saying. So like, okay, we're talking about NRS, right? NetherRealm Studios and what they've been doing and all that cool stuff, and obviously they knocked it out of the park, right? They make some good story, but a lot of people are forgetting 1 through 8 had some kind of stories.
I mean, yeah, like this was like back in the day, obviously.
Midway
yeah,
era.
the Midway era and stuff. Like, I mean, freaking Mortal Kombat versus DC. That story is very,
Oof.
yeah, it's very weird. But yeah, there's a lot of like ups and downs with that stuff. With at least the Mortal Kombat. That's why with MK9 they essentially more or less kind of just reboot the series.
Yeah.
Because MK9 is basically just Mortal Kombat 1 through 3 story, but retold. It's a bit better pace and stuff.
With some changes here and there.
Yeah, changes here and there, and then MKX is like sort of, you know, builds off of that, brings in new characters, you know, all that stuff, and then MK11 sort of rounds it out with some time travel plot shenanigans and stuff like that. And yeah, it's sort of like just kind of interesting I think that's what makes that sort of whole thing interesting is that, all right, where we go now, especially considering, you know, the various endings they have for MK11. But yeah. Obviously, it's not like the people behind the Mortal Kombat series
have always had.
Yeah, have always had like good storytelling. It's they had to like they really worked hard to like try to make decent story modes and have like, you know, like stories that matter. But they essentially had to like pretty much go back to the roots and just rebuild for that. And that's something I don't think some other fighting games are willing to do just because they have just a story legacy. And you know it's gonna be very hard to like go back to said roots and like try to like restart or get like a new take on things. I mean, the closest thing I can think of would be like maybe Soul Calibur 6.
Yeah, I remember.
It's technically kind of sort of rebooting of Soul Calibur after the very bad Soul Calibur 5 story.
Oh God! Why'd you gotta remind me of Soul Calibur 5?
I mean, you know, it's not.
And I liked the game too.
Yeah, no,
it was a fun game.
It's a fun game, but
it's still they thought it was in there.
Yeah, it's you know I like Soul Calibur 5, but then the story mode is just. I mean, to be fair, they're already on a thin budget because they're just using nothing but drawings, like sketches and shit for some cutscenes, and they only had like a couple of like animated stuff. But I mean, yeah, Soul Calibur 6's story is pretty much just a retelling of Soul Calibur 1's story.
Yeah, with what was his name? Keelik and Maxi and Xiao Yu, I think was it?
No, it's Shanghua.
Shanghua.
With that whole story between all of them, and then you get other stuff. But yeah, no, it's you know, it does I think a decent way of like retelling that story.
I would say the same thing with Tekken 7. Like Tekken 7 has a good root of a story, but it's often contrived with a lot of stuff, which I think that's kind of one of the reasons why a lot of people also don't like fighting game stories. They can be a little contrived. Because like, if you look at the bare bones of of the Tekken series, it's really just this issue with this family, with the Mishimas and like, you know, Heihachi, the dad throws his kid off a cliff, and if you played through the arcade as the kid who is Kazuya, you throw the dad off the cliff, and then if you play, was it 2? If you win with Heihachi, you throw him instead of a cliff, you throw him off a volcano, and then you get Tekken 3, which I think is the one that everyone goes to as being the best one in terms of story, especially since there's a new anime coming out that's centered around Tekken 3.
Yeah, and it follows Jin.
Yeah,
you know.
Jin, who's the son of Kazuya, and how big monster, Aztec monster god, comes, kills his mom, supposedly. And now he's got to go and train with Heihachi and be like, I need to take vengeance on my mother.
Yeah.
And then somehow Kazuya survives being thrown off a volcano because devil powers. And then Jin has devil powers, and now it's a fight between father, son, and grandpa. And then World War III happens, war crimes, and then finally the fight is over between Heihachi and Kazuya. Kazuya throws Heihachi into a volcano.
And then also Akuma was there.
Somehow,
Yeah.
I still need a confirmation on that. Harada, how is Akuma in the story?
I mean, yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I love Akuma. He's one of my favorite Street Fighter characters, and we'll get to Street Fighter story in a minute. But that was so weird, but I love it. It was so weird.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of what I mean by it. It's very like there's a lot of them that are really good, but also like a bit too contrived.
Yeah, I definitely get what you mean by that, and I think just something that comes along with, I guess, fighting game stories, and it's just sort of like I think if we want to talk about Street Fighter for a little bit, when you look at all the Street Fighter games that have come out, like I think this is just a problem that like some fighting games have is that you want to move on in terms of the story, but it's very hard to like make new characters that can stick the landing and like.
Oh, so we're talking about Street Fighter 3, aren't we?
I mean, it's not just Street Fighter 3. It happens, I think, with a lot of fighting games when you think about it. Like Mortal Kombat 10 introduced new characters. Cassie Cage. What was her name? Jackie Briggs.
Yeah.
Like new characters and stuff to like. It seems like a sort of a thing of like adding new characters that sort of like replace the old guard. I mean, Soul Calibur 5 did this.
Yeah, they replaced Sophitia and Cassandra
with
Patroclus and what was her name?
Pyra. Yeah.
Who play the same as they do, just a slight difference. I think Patroclus was more the aggressive type, while Pyra was more of the defensive type.
Yeah, and obviously there's also other things like what was her name? Natsu replaces Taki.
Yeah, that pissed off a lot of people. I remember,
and as well as like that one kid like replacing Kilik.
And then we still get Kilik, but he's
the weapon master of the game.
Yeah,
which is like okay.
Well, the male weapon master.
Yeah, male weapon master.
Because there's Elysium, who was the female weapon master, and there was Edge Master, who was both.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's. That stuff just tends to happen, and the thing is that fans of the series generally tend to like you said, tend to not like it when a character that they like gets replaced with a different character that plays kind of the same. It's a very if you ever hear the reason why people were upset about the comments made about Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite being like the characters are all just functions, really.
Listen, He's not wrong, but no, we don't like it when you replace characters
with slightly different characters. Like it's the character that like you grow to like is part of the reason why you play them. I mean, obviously, the way they play is also a huge factor, but like if you like this character a lot, you want to play them. I mean, like if we're gonna get into it, Street Fighter 3. New generation, literally straight up is just
a new generation.
Yeah, brand new characters. I mean, you still have some old ones like Ryu, right?
Ryu and Ken are the only returning ones, and that's because they were kind of forced to put them back. Because as the story goes, so Street Fighter, everyone knows Street Fighter 2, but no one knows Street Fighter 1 and 3 because certain reasons. Street Fighter 1 wasn't as revered, but had like the building blocks of like what eventually would be Street Fighter 2, right? And then after so many versions of Street Fighter 2, and then they did the Alpha series, they decided, okay, we're finally going to do 3. And 3 was going to be a whole new cast of characters. You had guys like Alex, Necro, Ibuki, Makoto, Sean, all those dudes, but no returning characters. You didn't have no Ken, you didn't have no Ryu, you didn't have Chun-Li, you didn't have Zangief. And anyone you've seen from Street Fighter 2, or anyone you recognize, was not in that game. And when they did like a test style for the arcade, a lot of people were very upset about that, and so they were kind of like made to put in Ryu and Ken because they both play the same and they're just different color swaps, right? So it wasn't that hard to put them in, and so they were and essentially forced to put those two characters in. And but throughout Street Fighter 3, you didn't really see that many returning characters except for maybe like four at best five. You had like Akuma, Chun Li, Ryu, and Ken being like the only ones to come back because they were such staple characters. So yeah, no. To your point, yeah. That's also a reason why it's kind of like hard for a lot of these old fighting games to move on because you have legacy characters that are kind of like defiant on the playstyle and the connection these players have. Like, how did people react with Gala not being in Street Fighter Five for like that first season?
I mean, yeah, people were definitely like, you can't have Guile. I mean, there was a lot of like things like that for Street Fighter Five when it came out, and
Yeah.
you know, like you had no Sagat. You know, people were like, you had to wait till season 3 to get Sagat, and people were like, hey, holy shit, Sagat. You know,
Yeah, I remember. I remember when Sagat was announced. The amount of nuts that the people reacted to, because Sagat is like such a staple character. Sagat with his tiger cuts and uppercut. Who's one of your guys in Street Fighter Five?
I mean, yeah, but you know, that's sort of just the thing. You know, like when it comes to characters that have that legacy and that have been in pretty much most of the games, it's sort of just like, you know, you kind of just feel like, well, what the hell?
Yeah, you're also thinking like, how can we continue when like their stories are kind of done, which is kind of like one of the reasons why I want to talk about the Street Fighter storyline, okay? Because like, so like the Street Fighter 2, it was just arcade endings, but they're all basically kind of like conclusions to their own little story, which is kind of like, which is why I don't agree with the idea that not that fighting games don't have a good story. I think Street Fighter 2 has good stories. They're just each character has their own little journey to the end, right? So like Chun Li, famously, like after defeating Bison, she's like, "I have finally avenged my father, and he can rest in peace, and now I can finally go and be a happy single girl."
I mean, yeah, it's fun. It's written very funny, but yeah,
It feels like that's a nice conclusion, right?
yeah.
And same thing with like Ken and Ryu. Like Ken's like, "Oh, I defeated Bison. Oh, my girl, we can finally get married." And Ryu is just like, "I don't care about winning the competition. I'm just gonna look for the next fight because the answer lies in the heart of battle or whatever." And he's walking into the sunset.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of just. I mean, again, that's how it was for those older games because they didn't really have probably that much time or resources to put any like super deep story. So they just had to go with
Something really nice and simple, but like you get a lot of the character just from that simple story. Is what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah.
Like Ryu is about the fight. It's all he really cares about. He's not in it for the rewards. He's not in it for the money. He's in it for the joy of the fight. Ken, he gets to settle down and marry the girl of his dreams. Chung Li avenges his father. By the way, they all beat Bison, and it's just like they don't do it together as a team. Like it's like your journey with that character, just to go along with what you said earlier. Like there's these stable characters that you kind of grown attached to. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, yeah, and I think weirdly enough that also adds into a bit of the sort of how messy fighting game stories can be is because like since like there has to be clearly one canon.
Yeah.
But because you can pick whichever character you want to complete said arcade mode or story mode. Well, it's more in like arcade mode than anything. It's sort of like it's sort of like, well, okay, then what's like the real canon storyline here?
Who's the main character we're following?
Yeah, who's the real main character?
And I think that's the reason why for a lot of like Western later adaptations of Street Fighter, it was always Guile.
Well, I think I know why it was always Guile.
Because he's the American?
Yeah, because he's the American. And why would they put the Japanese guy, Ryu, who clearly is like the main character?
He is the poster boy.
Yeah, he is the main character, like...
Well, quote unquote main,
I mean,
for the most part.
For the most part.
Because like
all the interesting stuff, Ryu gets to do has a bunch of like crazy stuff happening to him, right?
Yeah, he's got the Satsui no Hado with Akuma.
There's just a whole bunch of like stuff going on with Ryu.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. It's even funny because like to prep for this episode, I even looked into like other adaptations of Street Fighter aside from like the big obvious one, like the movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme as Guile, who's like the main hero and the one that fight Bison, and what's his name, Julia.
Raul Julia? No.
Yeah, the guy who plays Bison.
Yes.
Fucking fantastic.
Yeah, he did that because his kids love Street Fighter, and he was like,
Raul Julia,
yeah. I'm gonna, I'll play the role, and that was like his last role.
And he did it fantastic.
Yeah, he did it for his kids, man.
Yeah, and he just enjoyed the hell out of that scene. Like Chung Lee's giving the like you tried to take over my village, but my father stopped you, and such and such. And it's like I don't remember this at all.
Yeah, the day like Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life, but for me, it was Tuesday.
And it's just like, you motherfucker, it was Wednesday.
Wait, was it Wednesday? Is that what she says?
No, but it's like, but that expression tells you like, either he's right that it was on a Tuesday or it was on a Wednesday or some other day.
Yeah, but it just shows how little he cared.
Yeah.
Like, it was just another day for him.
Yeah. And then there's like the cartoon, right? The Street Fighter the animated series that was made by Americans is like Colonel Guile leads an elite task force called Street Fighter with Chung Li and those two random kids over there, Ken and Ryu, and it's just like, oh, you did that to those two.
Yeah, more or less.
And then there's the Street Fighter 2 V, which is the anime, which that was weird.
Well, I mean, I remember the Street Fighter, like the animated movie.
Which I think it was like the one that most people tend to go as like kind of like the ideal story, but even though it itself has some contradictions.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sagat's a cyborg.
Well, I don't know. I didn't know about that one. I'm gonna be honest.
It's been a while since you've seen it.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen stuff from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think when it comes to Street Fighter story, like and this is something probably some people don't know, is that like they haven't moved past Street Fighter 3 in terms of the lore.
Oh no, yeah, because it starts with Street Fighter 1, then Alpha, then 2, then 4, and then 5 in terms of like storyline. 4, then 5.
Then 3.
3 is the last one.
3 is the last in terms of the timeline.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure Capcom learned that if they want to move anywhere past Street Fighter 3, they have to abandon a good chunk of legacy characters, and they're just not willing to do that. Granted, I could be wrong, and Street Fighter 6 is where they'll be heading for that.
I mean, Ryu's an old man looking dude.
He has the beard on and everything, so who knows? Because I don't know.
I would love it to be.
I mean, it would be like a neat departure, and you could see a lot of potential for the story of Street Fighter.
You can see an aged up Guile, or you can see Guile's kids, because he has 2 of them, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
And like in Street Fighter 3, Ken is teaching Sean, whose sister we see in 5, Laura.
Yeah.
And such, and then that's pretty cool. Want to see more of that? But yeah, no, it's like, I mean, there is a story in Street Fighter 5. It just, like you said, they just kind of like refuse to move on. And it's not because like they don't know what they're doing with the story, but it's more like they can't afford to move on.
Yeah, when you have like probably the most famous fighting game series of all time, you're kind of just stuck in a loop of like having to keep using those iconic characters, but it's either you go back and just keep filling in the holes between 2 and 3, or you move on and like introduce brand new characters and hope that the audience likes them.
Yeah, because like okay, so like the newest character that's in Street Fighter 5, who's gonna be a main character in Street Fighter 6, Luke. man, no one liked that dude.
No, no one really. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I don't really much care for Luke. He
I
just,
like his gameplay.
yeah, I think that's about it because I don't like his design. Granted, from what we see from like the teaser for Street Fighter 6, I think they worked on it a little bit with his design.
I kind of like him more in Street Fighter 6 than I do in 5.
Yeah, I kind of like the design better in 6 than 5, but
Mm-hmm.
man, I still don't really care much for Luke.
There's nothing to latch on to.
Yeah, he's just dude who like dad died, and then I want to be strong like dad. That's
Yeah.
it.
I'm telling you, what I want to see is like maybe Ryu is teaching Luke. That's his student. Because Luke plays like a Shoto.
I mean, I guess. I
I don't know.
mean,
I mean, that would make it interesting, right?
yeah.
Like Ryu has his own student now and stuff. That isn't Sakura.
Okay. I was about to say, like, well, I mean, to be fair, technically Sakura,
Yeah.
but that was more like she wanted to learn Ryu, and Ryu at the time was like, I'm not ready for a student, but I guess I could teach you some Hadoukens, some Shoryukens.
And then she has her own little fighting style.
Yeah.
Imagine if Dan came back.
Like, I mean, he's in Street Fighter 5, though.
But I mean, like, he has a major storyline.
But,
No.
like, I mean,
No.
his only storyline was that Sagat killed his dad, and he was
And-
like, I want revenge, and,
He just sucks.
he's a joke character. Yeah.
He's just really bad. No, but like you said, like I think that's another thing, right? Like, even in like Capcom's rival company SNK, they too cannot move past a certain part of the story, right? Because you have the Fatal Fury games, and then technically the next part of that story is Garo, Mark of the Wolves, which has an older version of the main character who's Terry Bogard, who's teaching the son of, or who's partnered with the son of the guy who killed his father.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, the King of Fighters series stories like definitely have like progression.
Clearly, because we're in was it the 15th version of the
Yeah, I
King?
mean, this you're in KOF 15, and like we have like for like a couple of installments, you get different main characters. I mean, obviously for the first couple it was Kyo, then you have I'm pretty sure
It was K-Dash, and then it was
K-Dash,
Ash.
and then Ash and Crimson, and then for these like KOF 14 and 15 you have Shunei. And granted, some people were like on Shunei mainly because of just the way he looks.
I like the gameplay. I don't like the look.
Yeah, I feel like that just tends to be something that happens with a lot of characters that are supposed to take up the mantle, right?
Yeah.
It's like the gameplay is pretty solid. I just don't like how they look.
I mean, look at Alex, who was the guy who was supposed to take over Ryu in Street Fighter 3.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like the reverse, though, because I kind of like Alex's design, but he's a grappler.
Yeah, you can't handle the grappler.
I
no.
can't, no.
No. But at least with 15, it's clear that they still have like legacy characters around. Like Kyo's still here, Iori's still here. Obviously you have characters like Terry and Mai and all these other characters around. But like they have their own little bits of story moving around. Like clearly, like Shunei and his team are involved in the main plot of the story going forward.
Yeah.
But you have all these other characters that are doing their own little side plots that are also intertwined with the King of Fighter tournament.
Mm-hmm. Which it's kind of like more like, that side plot that doesn't really matter to anything.
Yeah, they're just like they're there, but if you're looking for like the main storyline, you're going with like the main hero team, right? Which I think is like how I think SNK's been able to like at least mitigate that stuff where like, oh yeah, we can keep some legacy characters here and there, but they're off doing their own little adventures, but we have these characters that are involved in the actual main plot.
Yeah, but then there's also the stuff that's going on with like the Fatal Fury team, and like where does that stand in the whole events of Garo? Because in the end of Garo, Rock Howard, who's the main protagonist of that game, kind of has to like figure out what he's gonna do with his life because he finds out, hey, your mom might still be alive, and I'm your evil uncle, and if you join me, I can help you find your mother. And Terry's like, but Rock, no, your surrogate father says no.
Yeah.
And then if you play the Garo team ending, it's like, oh no, guys, everything's okay. Like, wait, but what happened there? What happened with Gato and his vengeance for his father?
Well, to be fair, in the KOF series, Geese Howard's still alive, but in the Fatal Fury series, he's dead. So clearly, the KOF series and Fatal Fury series are on different timelines. It seems.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I mean, like, Rock is fighting in KOF 15 with a still young Terry. Like, clearly, there's like
Yeah.
there's some discrepancies here.
Yeah, that's what I kind of go with it. Like if you've been playing the Fatal Fury games and Garo, and it leads into Garo, King of Fighters is just a weird thing going on.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, to be fair, like they have shit where like fucking the Samurai Showdown characters show up in like at least one or two KOF games.
And it's like, why are you here?
It's like that doesn't make any sense. You guys are from samurai times, and here you are in modern Japan. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, to be fair, there's also points where they fight knights and all that shit.
Yeah, that's very true. Yes. But yeah, that's just. I think that's sort of just how we sort of can go with these fighting game stories.
And here's the thing, they're not terrible.
No, because I think my thing is that like if you can put it.
It's my phone.
If you can put like, I think for me, the best way I got to at least experience like say Street Fighter 2's story in a good way was from like the comics.
Oh, I'm sure you did read that.
Yeah, like I was like, here's the thing that I think with comes to like I guess these fighting game stories is that like they can work.
Yeah.
It's just that like you clearly need like people that care about it and like actually make it work or whatever. Because I know in Street Fighter 5 like it technically released the story mode after it launched.
After a very controversial launch.
Yeah, it didn't even have arcade at launch, didn't it? Right?
Something like that.
Yeah, but and it was kind of mixed, maybe because I'm guessing it was like I think it was the first time Capcom actually was like having to be like, okay, let's try to do an NRS like story mode for this, and they're like, this didn't turn out great.
Yeah,
but you can make the storyline with these characters work because there is enough details and lore and personalities with all these characters to make it like work and enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think that's why one of the reasons why like a lot of people talk about the Street Fighter 2 movie as like, oh, that's the story itself right there. Ken and Ryu are fighting Bison, and like almost every character is involved in some sort of way. Like, Fei Long and Ryu fight, and by the way, Fei Long is voiced by Bryan Cranston, which is weird. And then like he gets information from Fei Long, and then Ryu continues his journey to maybe find out what the fuck Bison's up to. And then let's be honest, probably the inspiration for what NRS has been doing was probably the first and probably the only successful Mortal Kombat movie.
Yeah, the first one. It definitely. I don't think you're wrong. Heck, I'm pretty sure they got the actor for Shang Tsung in that movie to be Shang Tsung in MK11, right?
Yep, he is in the game. He even does his like famous line like, "Your soul is mine.
Your brother's soul is mine."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, it's pretty clear. And heck, didn't they even get like alternate skins for like Sonya, which was like the actor that played Sonya?
Then they got the actors to voice them too.
Yeah, and for Johnny Cage too, right?
Johnny Cage too.
Yeah,
and Raiden.
Yeah, that's like clearly it shows dedication from NRS to like hey, we acknowledge the original movie and stuff,
and it clearly inspired what we've been doing with our story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's kind of obvious that there are good stories. It just depends on, like you said, people who care about to go ahead and try to make it. And like with Street Fighter, and there are good stories. Is that they're kind of like, you also have to understand that there's so many characters, some both new and old, that you kind of have to find a way to integrate them into a story that might not involve them,
Mm-hmm.
which is like the real difficult part. Because like, why would Guile be in Street Fighter 3?
I don't know.
His story is over. He beat because by Street Fighter 3, Bison's gone.
Mm-hmm.
The new villain is Gil,
Yeah.
who leads the secret society called the Illuminati and whatever shit, right? And like, so and Guile's whole thing was Bison because he killed his buddy Charlie Nash,
Yeah.
who came back again as, was it just Nash?
Yeah, I think it was just a Nash.
Yeah, as this weird zombie. What was up with that?
I don't know. I didn't follow much of Street Fighter 5 story.
Fair enough. But like in that one, it's like, now now Bison's gone. Guile can go and be a family man, as he's always said.
I mean, yeah, he was already a family man though. But yeah, I get what you mean. I get what you mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's sort of just probably just something that like these fighting game story modes have to learn is that one, having some engaging gameplay, and two, having an engaging storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Probably have people who care enough about the story and not just sort of being like, okay, let's just try to jam all these characters in somehow and give them something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Just have like a set, like, all right, this is the main character for the story mode, and just have us play through it and stuff.
Heck, if they want to do it in a way that would make sense while still adhering to like the fact that we got to bring out back these legacy characters, do the first, because nowadays DLC is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just have DLC legacy characters. Just have like the first roster be some returning characters, and like the new characters, and just say, oh, don't worry guys, Guile and Cigar are coming, but they're gonna be DLC.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, again, it's just some people don't like that.
Fair.
Like, I mean, heck, it's whether it's from like, oh, they should have just been here on the base roster, to, oh, they just want more of my money. Like, I hate these DLC practices. It's all kinds of
It's all kinds of nuts.
yeah, it's very hard to like just get it all down right. You know? Like I at the end of the day, it's probably like there's probably never gonna be like a fighting game with a story mode that pleases everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as people are able to do it right, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think it's. I mean, I know it makes it sound like, oh man, fighting game players are like. No, man. There's a reason why, we gravitate to these kind of characters. If you made, for me, I play Shadows. There's these characters I like to play. If you took out an aspect of them that makes it, the gameplay different, I'm like, I don't like this character anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's kind of like my thing with Akuma now, because Akuma was one of my favorite characters to play, and if I want to do most of the stuff, I have to do this certain thing. Granted, he still plays pretty good, but now there's a bit of more like intricacies into how he plays compared to like previous games that I played him in with like Street Fighter 3 Alpha and like all the other stuff. But like, and it's always been gameplay with everyone. And I guess that gets us into like one of the reasons why I think so many people kind of want a story mode. And this is more from the casual sense, is that it's where they can learn how to play. And like I said earlier with MK11, you're not gonna get better at the game from the story mode.
Yeah, I get what you mean by that. I think it's just some people like to believe that it's just from how it is from like other games.
Yeah.
That like generally in the story mode of like other games, you get like essentially tutorial, essentially bits of gameplay.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh yes, here's how you do this thing, and here's how you do that. Here's such and such. Here's like a mission that explains you how you do this thing or whatever. And from there, you can just get by from learning those skills and like maybe improve yourself on them. If you're gonna do a fighting game story, you go one of two ways. If you want to get someone to learn how to play a game, you either have to use a character that's very easy and accessible to understand, and have them like, do that stuff and teach them. But then it's like, okay, you only know how to play this one character though. What if you don't like that character? What if you like this other character and the story mode doesn't allow you to play that character at all? Then you have to go. Then there's the other route of just like, here's the game, or what Mortal Kombat does, where you play different characters throughout the storyline to various different fights,
and they all play different.
And you're just gonna be like, okay, this guy doesn't play like how this other guy played. This kind of sucks for me.
I mean, granted, Mortal Kombat has like very simple input motions and stuff like that, but like, what's his name? Liu Kang is not gonna play like Johnny Cage.
Yeah, like you're just gonna have different like experiences with that. And I get why, again, it's just because people just kind of like see story mode as sort of a nice safe space for people to maybe try out things. But realistically, like you're just gonna have to like go into training mode for a little bit, not to like learn stuff, just more like, because I know, like, I mean, granted, games nowadays as well, there's some games that have like little character missions where it just more or less just tells you how this character plays and stuff, and if you just do that stuff, you'll like learn a bit.
Try out combos.
Yeah, or just just pick a character that looks cool and just mess around with them. It's not that difficult, and I think part of the reason why it's probably would even be hard for people to make that kind of content, or for a fighting game story of like say, hey, this mission is all about you having to learn how to anti-air. Either do this move with this input or just do something else or whatever. Like the thing with fighting games is that a lot of it is just reactions, and if you just have this thing of like character jumps in the air and then text being like, like anti-air now or whatever, some people aren't gonna get it that easy, or rather, it's like people are gonna like think of it like that, but when you're in an actual setting of, say, playing against a high level CPU in arcade mode or playing online, you're gonna have different scenarios pop up, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. It's different scenarios that probably the creators of the game didn't envision putting time and effort to put into a tutorial. But yeah, it's just it's just not very. I wouldn't say it's like a wasted effort, but it's gonna be very hard.
It's like you gotta understand there's a reason why that might not work as much as you would want it to work.
Yeah, and I think it's another thing is that just it's very much sort of like what you get out of the game, like, because it's not. I wouldn't say it's the responsibility of the developers to make you a better player.
Yeah.
Because
it's all on you, dude.
Yeah, because think about like a lot of other games. It's like it's not up to, say, the people behind Apex Legends on making you a better Apex Legends player. You become a better player the more you play, and the more you sort of like see situations and adapting to them. It's sort of the same thing with with fighting games. If you're gonna want to, if you want to play online and want to get good, you just gonna have to sort of
start taking the L's, man.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, granted, that's not to say that fighting games shouldn't have robust tutorial modes or training modes that help players understand various concepts. Because I mean, yeah, that should be a thing. That absolutely should be a thing.
Yeah, how long would it take us to get good at fighting games?
I mean, a bit, honestly.
Yeah.
You get to, you have a moment where you're just, sort of just button mashing a lot, but eventually you sort of have to like take a second, look at like what certain things do, and you just gotta have to prioritize and like learn like, okay, this does that. What can I do? What can I do to get myself to do that? Or what can I do to take advantage of, this and that.
like it took me a while to finally master like was it a wake up DP?
Oh yeah, well I guess to be fair for me, I always just mashed it. I was always mashing it
Yeah.
for Wake Up TV. To be fair, I never even thought about doing that before, but like eventually I was like, you know what, I'm gonna mash it.
Yeah.
If
And
they're
you're
not
like,
gonna,
oh, that's how you do it.
yeah, and it's funny because I remember doing that once online.
Mm.
I think I was playing Street Fighter, and you get to see like the nice dynamic change of just hey, you're doing this thing, and now your opponent's reacting like, okay, maybe I'm not gonna go in on him when he's down because he's probably gonna mash DP, and then it's like,
Mm.
okay, he's backing away, I'm not gonna do it, and it's like those little mind games of like, is he gonna do it? And it's like, I'm gonna do it.
Now that being said, I feel like if you want to make a good story mode that teaches, I think having at the early beginnings of the game where you can basically learn the basics of what to do for a character, I think that's fine. You know, because I do remember back when I was playing the PSP, was it Soul Calibur Broken Destiny?
Oh yeah.
I I enjoyed the story. It was like an original story with whatever character you chose, whether it be a custom character or a established character. If it was like, let's ignore the fact that you might be playing as Tira and or Nightmare while you're paddling around with Cassandra, Sophie. No, not Sophie. What was her name? Hildy and Dampierre, who and like going into like traveling the world kind of shit. But that also, but the whole point that everything in that game was like, oh, do this, dude, this. It was like a missions trial, right?
Mm.
You gotta do it, and that was for the whole game. And while I had fun and I learned more how to play, it was not fun to like. I didn't get to fight. Basically, it's more like I can only continue once I've figured out how to do X, Y, and Z,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine for the beginning. But I'm like, okay, I know what I'm doing. Please let me play the. Please let me. Please let me. No, no. Oh, all right. I guess I gotta wait all the way to the end against Algol to actually play the game.
Mm-hmm.
So that also kind of sucks. But but it was still pretty cool. And I guess that's all we can say about like fighting games stories is that they're not inherently bad or they are a little complex, but that's because they have to accommodate for a lot of stuff. And it's kind of hard to do that with like with some companies because they have a lot of established characters that if you got rid of, it's kind of feels like why it doesn't like it's inherent to the gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very gameplay centered kind of a genre. So while it is possible to do a great story mode, kind of like what NetherRealms has been doing with Mortal Kombat, it's also very apparent that we need to like prioritize gameplay as well just before storyline and any of that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, all I gotta say is that weirdly enough, Grand Blue Fantasy Versus has a pretty solid story mode, simply because
isn't it basically an RPG?
yeah, it's part RPG, part beat 'em up, where you just battle monsters. I mean, it works for what it is. I'm gonna be honest, it works for what it's probably the best Arc System Works story they did. It's not like Dragon Ball Fighters, which is I don't even know what the fuck that story was.
I didn't even finish it.
I didn't finish it either. I just got very confused, and I was like, I'm not even gonna waste my time.
Yeah, you have to finish it to get. Was it Android 21?
Yeah, but then it's like,
I can just buy them.
You just buy. You waste $5, or do you want to go through this shitty story mode? You know what?
I rather waste the $5.
You already have the. I already paid for the season pass. I might as well just pay the $5. And that's how they get you.
That's how they get you.
They make a shitty story mode.
Cause like it was just like, okay, you gotta go in like either whatever direction you want to go to with your characters. You gotta beat them up, and then
you gotta level them up and stuff. And it's like, what the fuck.
Then at some point you gotta fight like a boss, but then it's like, I don't care. And depending on where you go and whatever character you have on deck, you might get an interaction. But it's like, this is too much. Bueno.
Hola, gordo.
¿Qué pasó?
¿Qué estás haciendo?
Nada, ¿por qué?
Digo,
Nada.
saca las las horas.
Oh, okay.
Ahí está el pollo.
All right.
Y ahí en la hielera hay un traste con arroz.
Mm-hmm.
Ahí no me lo caliento.
All right.
Y yo,
Está acostado.
está acostado, le estoy hablando y no me contesta.
Yo lo hablo entonces. Yo lo digo.
Ok, dile que me hable.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, you didn't get a call at all. What is up with that?
I don't know. There's something wrong with the phone.
Okay, let's just finish this. Where were we?
We were just talking about Dragon Ball Fighters story mode shitty, but yeah, but no, that's I don't want to get too much into how much I didn't care for Dragon Ball Fighters story mode.
Gameplay was fantastic though.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think that's a good place to end it on. Is that a lot of these story modes aren't terrible. The stories themselves aren't terrible, but like you're not gonna get as much story concept out of it because gameplay is an important factor within this genre, right? You can't avoid that. As much as you would like to have an easy and accessible way for you to learn, the story mode will only service you as much unless they find a way to make it for you to cater to every character, to archetype there is. Because not every character is a Shoto, not every character is a grappler, not every character is a zoner, not every character is a puppeteer. Like all this crazy stuff that I'm probably throwing out to you guys that you don't know. Like that's my point.
yeah, like I'm all for fighting games getting better stories, especially ones that aren't just fucking cutscenes for 4 hours. But at the same time, I mean, I guess to your point of like, people want story modes to be like the way you learned the game. It's like, it can be done like that. It's gonna be very hard, and and there's probably just gonna be other ways for you to learn to play the game.
And I guess it's a good place to end it on. So thank you guys for taking this out. If you want to follow us on any social medias, we are active in almost all of them: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Most active at the Geek Centurions, most active on Instagram, where you can find a link to all the podcasts that we're officially part of, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, all that good stuff. And you can find a link to the YouTube page where you audio listeners can put a face to the voice. And for you guys out there who want to support us in any form of way, we do have a Patreon that can be used for any form of support. And yeah, guys, that's about it. It's been me, your boy. It's been me, your boy Eli.
It's been me, Joe.
And so that's the end of the episode. Hopefully we get more better storylines, but also get some badass gameplay. Maybe we made a game that's with simple inputs. Maybe that'll solve everything.
I mean, I don't know. That's always a discussion, a debate. I don't want to get too into it because I don't want to make this any longer. But all I gotta say is that making simplified stuff doesn't inherently mean you're gonna get more people to play and stay with the game longer. No, that's just my opinion.
Entire conversation. We can do it in another episode. Anyways, guys, you guys have a good one. Peace.